Hi, Ryan.
Hey. Oh, what's funny?
It's funny that we're going to talk about what we're going to talk about because we've been kind of talking about it, and now we're going to talk about it some more.
We talk about lots of stuff, so hopefully you'll narrow it down for me.
I'll do my best.
Okay. Is this one going to bum me out?
No.
Oh, pregnant pause if I've ever heard one.
Well, I suppose it's up to you.
Okay.
Oh, wait, let me see if I can actually utilize the topic of today's episode to see whether or not it'll bum you out.
All right.
Do you think this episode will bum you out? Based off of knowing what the potential topics are. Because we have a list and notes of potential topics, and you don't know which one I'm going to choose.
I never know which one you're going to choose.
Yeah.
No. Knowing what's on the list, I'm always excited about those things and to learn about them. Mm-hmm. It's just when we start talking about them that they then bum me out.
Oh, no. Interesting. Okay.
But there's been a few that haven't. The pandas one, the last one, was fun.
That made you happy.
Yeah, it's because they're so stupid.
So, okay. So let's plot this out if we could.
Okay.
So if we're looking at a graph of how bummed you think you'll be when we do an episode, let's say on a scale of 1 to 4, right? 4 being super bummed.
This is a weird scale to choose, by the way. 1 to 4?
Maybe one will be super bummed. How about that?
Why don't you go to 5?
Well, why not, I suppose.
This is America, damn it.
Yeah, that's true. So let's say 5 is joyful. You've left ecstatic.
All right.
And a 1 is super bummed, dude. How often would you say that you start the episode thinking this is going to bum me out?
How often?
Uh-huh.
On the scale.
Yeah. How often do you think it's going to be like a 1 or a 2?
Like 10% of the time.
10% of the time you're like at the beginning of the episode, you're like, this is going to bum me out.
Yeah.
And then how often are you bummed out?
Like
in reality,
like
after
80%.
the fact.
I'm trying to think of all the episodes we've done so far. We haven't done that many, but
usually you end up bummed. But you start positive.
yeah.
Okay, so this is great because you might argue that usually, and don't worry, folks, we'll put up a picture of this graph because this is the graph that we'll be debating today. So this is tiny, but
That's okay. It'll be a picture. They won't know.
They won't know. So if is the x-axis the one that runs on the bottom?
Oh man, you were asking the wrong person. So just say the horizontal line and the vertical line.
Yeah. Okay. So if the horizontal line, I didn't do great in algebra, guys. If the horizontal line is how often you are accurate in your prediction, and the y-axis is the vertical line, is the actual rating of your joy, then this would say that in the beginning, your predictions are like relatively measured, and you start off high, right? You're like, this is going to be great. This is awesome. But as you gain more knowledge, your predictions become lower because you're like, oh, actually, this is going to bum me out. Right?
Yeah.
And they become more accurate in their lowerness.
God, sort of like being a Dodgers fan, which I am.
Yeah, you start off strong every season. You're like, this is the season. But then the more information you get about how much the Dodgers suck.
No, they're actually great.
Oh.
And then they just lose in the playoffs. Or get robbed.
I think that's a different kind of effect. And I gave it away a little bit, folks. We are talking about the Dunning-Kruger Effect.
The Dunning-Kruger Effect.
Nice. I get to use the God voice.
Always. I've tried to slip it in every episode if I can.
You didn't do the patan.
Oh, shit.
The Dunning-Kruger Effect.
Ba-dam, 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 ba-dam.
Oh, you don't even know.
Should I leave all of that in?
If you want.
All right, cool. Because I was super lost about what we were talking about. Mm-hmm. And now that you've said what we were talking about, I am remembering that when I saw that on the list, I had no idea what it was.
Yes. And when you said you had no idea what it was, I got really excited because I realized I don't know that I knew really what it was. In as much as I thought I had a pretty good idea, and it turns out I was wrong, which is sort of the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Nice.
Which is pretty awesome. So the Dunning-Kruger effect was or is a cognitive bias theory. Have you heard of cognitive bias?
I think so.
Cognitive bias is like a web of theories about why we think the way that we do. And if you want to think of it like a person sees a thing, let's say a partly cloudy day in Oregon.
Which there are a lot of.
And you as that person, let's put you in this example, see the partly cloudy day. In your mind, you're going to take in that information, but it's also wrapped in and marinating in at the same time, smothered and covered, like your Waffle House hash browns, in the words of that Animal Planet song.
I remember that song.
Thanks, Mom. If you take that information in, it's not going in pure, right? It's washed in your perceptions that are subjective about how you feel about clouds, how you feel about Oregon, how you feel about this weather in relation to weather from your childhood, how you feel about this weather in proportion to how many days in the year you've already had this weather and what you could have instead, right?
Right.
And so someone asks you, how about that weather today? And you might say, fuck this weather.
I hate this state.
Whereas I could be looking at that same partly cloudy weather and go, I love this weather. This is why I moved here. But it's the same weather.
Yeah, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
That is cognitive bias.
Okay.
So that's us taking objective information and then putting it in our subjective perception of reality and then having biased opinions based off of that cognitive web of effects.
Got it. So, if you're going to get to this, then we can put a pin in it. But is this the same thing that large corporations work towards when they're talking about inclusion and diversity and stuff like that? Working against biases to, I don't know, help their public image or hiring practices and things like that.
Yeah. Oh shit. What did she say? So Hillary Clinton, during her campaign in 2016, even though it was pre Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, like peak race relations talk.
Yeah.
Even though it was pre that time, you know, we're still talking about race in America. Mm-hmm. And several points in
Donald Glover made a whole song about it.
This is America.
Yeah.
Guns in my area. I love that song. And the video is so good.
Actually, I like the video way more than the song itself.
The video with the song?
The video and the song are great as a piece of art.
Yeah.
And media, it's fantastic.
Totally.
The song itself, I heard on the radio and I didn't like it.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know that I didn't like it, but I liked it way more with the video.
Oh, no. I think it's two completely different things.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's because it's a song with a message. Mm-hmm. And that message is conveyed, I think, more clearly through the video.
Cognitive bias.
Is it?
Totally.
Oh, damn.
Totally.
Hell yeah. High five me.
You get it.
So the debate, sorry.
The debate. So real quick, Hillary Clinton during her campaign was talking a lot about implicit bias, and implicit bias is very similar. It's like the things that we think, and she was using it in the context of race relations, saying that, quote, racial bias is something that has been part of our DNA going back probably millennia. And she was saying it in the context of what we need to do is be more honest about our implicit biases and surface them, because today most people believe that they don't have these biases. And it's because, like, it's a perfect example would be somebody saying, I don't see color or I don't see race. I don't have biases, right? I love everybody equally. That's just not true. We come into every situation with our own subjective reality, and from that we make decisions.
Yeah.
And those decisions can be terrible or they can be accurate, but usually we have to make them quickly. And this goes back to what we've been talking about, especially over the last couple of days. And really it comes up a lot in our conversations outside of You Don't Even Know.
Did you just look at the camera and break the fourth wall?
I did.
Wow.
Because I want them to know that sometimes we exist outside of your little
I like
ears.
that. That's
yeah,
good.
Did you like that?
Yeah, it's
I'm
very
not
Jim
going to look
Halpert
at it
of
again.
you.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
you are the Jim to my Pam.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the Dwight.
Yeah.
Just doing and saying absurd things. You still love me.
Even with those mustard colored shirts.
You love my mustard shirts. Yeah. And we've been talking a lot about that, particularly in regards to politics and healthcare and how people have treated things like the pandemic and what they know about health or what they know about international conflicts, local conflicts. People are coming at those topics with limited information. We're just not experts. There's too much information and we have to make a decision on it real quick.
Yeah, okay. I'm remembering
You with
these
me?
conversations. Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Yep. And just like when we talk about those things outside of the podcast, like we don't always agree because we're coming at it from different subjective realities.
Yeah.
And they feel very true to both of us.
Right.
And it doesn't necessarily mean one of us is right or one of us is wrong, because right and wrong are also subjective. And the speed at which we need to make those decisions is often put under the umbrella of heuristics. Have you ever heard that term before?
No.
Maybe in relation to like machine learning heuristics? No? So heuristics, it comes from the ancient Greek heurisko, which sounds kind of like eureka,
Oh, okay.
because that's where that word comes from.
I think I have a cousin named Marisco.
Eurisco Caldera,
Yeah.
brother of Felipe. Felipe and Eurisco. Eurisco means like to find or to discover. Hence, Eureka, discovered. I found it. Yeah.
Okay.
And heuristics is the process by which we quickly make decisions using mental shortcuts. And it's to come to those decisions as quickly as possible. And we try to make the most accurate decision based off of the information that we have. But we're just going to use the shortcuts that we have to get there because time is of the essence, right?
Okay. And this is, I'm thinking about like neural pathways. Those can be created or developed over time, right?
Yeah, totally.
And based on one's upbringing or background or whatever, those pathways are created through those experiences. And is that related to this a little bit?
Yeah, totally. Because the more we feel like our cognitive biases have been reinforced by our experiences, the more we'll believe those biases to be true.
Okay.
And the harder it will be to break them as well.
Sure. Yeah.
And algorithms use these. We use these to study animals. We use these to study people and relationships to things. And sometimes it leads to accurate answers to good decisions using those shortcuts, because usually it means using the most relevant information and not necessarily all the pieces of information available. For example, like I was buying an air fryer, right? And it took me a hot minute to buy an air fryer.
Yeah.
Even though I had 2 Walmart gift cards for $100 each.
And you got a killer air fryer.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And I compared dozens of air fryers from multiple sites, Amazon, Walmart, Target. Even though I didn't have gift cards to Amazon or Target, I compared them all because I wanted to make the most accurate decision possible.
Right.
And so I was comparing reviews. I was looking at specs. I was looking at materials, measurements, all that stuff. And if I had collated all of that information and made the most logical, rational decision, it might not have made me the happiest. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does, because that process that you just described is the same process I use whenever I'm looking at it for a new watch or something. It's the same thing, because I will study to death the thing that I'm looking to buy, or the thing I'm interested in, just the thing I want to learn about, and I'll take like the hard specs of it and compare it to people's reviews of it, and then my own experience with it if I have that, or my own use cases if I can like sort of hypothesize them.
Sure.
Yeah. So is that similar?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly right. But ultimately, you have to make a choice at some point, right?
Yeah.
So
it's so scary.
Right?
Too.
It's so scary.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. It's so scary. And what ultimately puts you over the edge when you make a decision? How do you usually get there?
Well, it's funny that you asked that, because when you said the thing at the end where you're like, I wouldn't be happy if I made the logical choice, what usually gets me to do it is picturing how excited I'm going to be when I get it. That ultimately trumps a lot of the things that I might have researched and discovered about it. Is it going to make me happy when I open the box? Is it going to make me smile when I put it on? Is it going to bring me joy when I use it? You know?
Yes, exactly. You're imagining possibilities.
Yeah.
You're creating realities from your perceived reality and the information that you've gathered.
But that's like very illogical, isn't it?
Well, it depends on what you think the right answer is, right?
Oh, sure.
Because there are many different right answers, even to the watch problem or to the air fryer problem. Like I wanted something that looked nice with what we had already. Yeah. That would not make me upset when I saw it. This makes me upset. But I also wanted something that when I used it wasn't going to hurt my arms, pulling out a big drawer of fried food.
Because you're so small.
Because I'm so small and little, just a baby.
With those little baby arms.
Some little baby hands and fingies. Fingies and toes.
Yeah, you are quite small.
Well, comparatively. That's your bias showing. But the ultimate choice that I made was using shortcuts and being like, this is the most relevant information to me. It's got 2 baskets. It'll match our appliances. Most people say this one doesn't suck.
Yeah.
I really didn't use the most logical way of making that decision, because the air fryer I ended up choosing had like 3 reviews on it total. Oh. But it was the right price, and I thought it would look nice with our appliances, and it had 2 baskets. And so I was like, this will work. Huh. And I'm very happy with my decision.
Yeah, and so is Johnny. He loves it.
Johnny loves it. We can make 2 things at a time. So he's can cook in there with me without frustrating me. And
I'm so dumb. I still don't know how it works.
And that's called weaponized incompetence. And that's a different episode, guys.
Okay. Side story. Johnny wanted me to make him toast using the air fryer. And I was like, dude, I want to make you toast, but I have no idea how this thing works. So he ended up having to do it. I felt so bad.
You know what I love is you didn't use that opportunity to then learn how to make the toast.
I didn't. No.
You were like, just have the boy do it.
Damn.
Yeah. Again, folks, that's an upcoming episode. Which I think will be very interesting in its own way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we use those shortcuts to get there. But the problem is we don't know what we don't know, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it'll be like known unknowns, Donald Rumsfeld, right? Like we know that there are things that we don't know.
Are you you think you can do the hat trick? So you've got 2 Donalds down. You need one more.
Oh, man.
Just keep it in the back of your mind.
Okay. Yeah, we don't know what we know that we don't know as well. Right? So like there are just going to be gaps in our information regardless of what we're studying. You never truly master anything, right? So what people think of when they think of the Dunning-Kruger effect is, don't worry guys, you'll see this, is this same graph, right? Where you've got this little peak, you start off low, and then you've got this peak, and then it goes low again, and then it raises up.
Okay.
Like a roller coaster where you start at the bottom of the hill, right?
Yeah.
And you go, and then you go, wow.
Yeah, that actually looks exactly like it.
Right?
Yeah.
So what this graph is showing is on the y-axis is your confidence level in your competence of a thing, right? That could be a sport, how good at grammar you think you are, how funny you think you are, whatever, right? It's your confidence in your competence. And at the top is the high level of confidence in your competence, and low is bottom, you think you suck.
Okay.
And then on the x-axis is your actual knowledge of your competence.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Your actual performance and knowledge. So when you start doing a thing for the first time, when you first start, you don't really know anything about it. So you're going to estimate your confidence in your competence as being pretty low, right?
Sure, yeah.
You're going to be like, if you're a relatively humble person,
Yeah.
which most people are, you're going to say, I'm probably not very good at this. But then when you first start doing it, usually you'll be like, oh, this isn't so bad. This is pretty easy.
Yeah.
I get it, right? Yeah, that's not so bad. So your confidence shoots up. And in psychology and colloquially, they call this Mount Stupid.
I really wish girls would stop saying that to me.
Perfect. So with Mount Stupid, your actual knowledge is at its lowest, right?
Yeah.
Except from the very beginning.
Sure.
You know super little about that. And that's why you think, oh, this is easy. And then this is another way you can see this here. So it starts off, oh, this is easy. And then as you start gaining more knowledge, you go, oh, actually, this is kind of hard, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know as much as I think I know. And then you keep doing it and you go, fuck this, I give up. And that's usually where I drop a fixation.
Yeah. Okay. I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's rough when that happens, right?
Definitely.
Because you're like, I suck at everything. I don't want to do anything ever again. Why do
Yeah.
I even try?
Yeah.
So most people give up there. But if you keep learning, right? If you keep trying to increase your knowledge, it's going to stay low for a hot second, your confidence and your competency. But it's a healthy prediction, right? Because you're being humble in saying, there's probably still a lot to learn.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And your confidence stays low until you start to gain mastery. And then you're going to say, okay, I'm probably actually pretty good at this thing. As your confidence increases, your knowledge usually increases as well.
Okay, and that increase is more steady than the first.
Yeah.
Than the Mount Stupid.
Mount Stupid's a big old, like straight to the sky, right?
Yeah,
Because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And as you know things, you realize the gaps in your knowledge are probably a lot wider and deeper than you thought they were. And that's when people get bummed and they think they suck. When they probably don't, right? Their performance is probably better than they think it is. So that's what people think of when they think of the Dunning-Kruger effect. They think of that pew, and then meow, and then meow, right?
So then is the Dunning-Kruger effect generally illustrated in that kind of graph? And it's usually the same shape? Usually
the same shape. If you search Dunning-Kruger effect on Google, that's what you'll usually see. And people quote it all the time when they talk about people talking about things that they have no business talking about, right?
Yeah.
Stupid people thinking that they're smarter than they think they are and saying stupid shit. We see it all the time on social media, right?
Oh, yeah.
Pick a topic.
I'm not even on it too much, and I know that.
Pick a topic, right? And you'll find people who have whole accounts devoted to them being so-called experts on things.
Yeah.
When they're not. And you have two huge problems with that. One is that the actual experts assume that most people aren't idiots. Right? So they're over.
Well, that makes them idiots.
Well, yeah, exactly. They're suffering from their own version of cognitive bias.
Yeah.
They assume that most of the people that are going to take in the information that we all have access to are rational people that are humble, and they're going to think, about their gaps of knowledge with critical thinking skills. They're wrong. So they're already starting from a place of assessing people incorrectly for the most part. And then people who are on the opposite scale, total beginners and people with low competency in a topic, they don't know what they don't know. So they're going to rate themselves higher than what they think it is. So like with the issue with masking, right? And how vaccines work. Suddenly everybody had to take in a shit ton of information and they weren't experts. And in other times in history, even recent history, people as a whole might have been more apt to trust experts had they not also been under all the stressors that we were under. Like, we're all going to die, Yeah. So the pressure involved in making a decision quickly, heuristics, right? Making that with the relevant information, trying to make a quick decision and make a good decision. When adding stressors to that and adding pressure, that's when people are going to maybe make poorer decisions, because the amount of information that they're pulling that they think is relevant is going to be affected by their bias.
Okay.
I'm going to use an example.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So you were just talking the other day about how there's too many news sources, right?
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about bias with that.
Yeah, and yes. I mean, like, in general, I think there are too many news sources, but to put a finer point on it, I think there are too many niche news sources.
Yeah, exactly. And
yes. Is that...
And
I want there to be a distinction between those two things.
And that's exactly the topic, is that people will consider certain information to be relevant and reliable based off of their biases. And you know what an influencer is, right? Yeah. They're a person that...
The worst.
They're the worst. They're using people's perception of their value, their perceived value, as a reason why their opinions should influence them. Literally, right? And that's why they get sponsorships with products and sponsorships with brands and, get free nights at hotels and stuff, because they are convincing the people who own those companies, my followers are trusting my judgment. Yeah. To be influencing them positively. They'll benefit from my influence.
That is fucking dangerous.
It is.
It's so dangerous.
It absolutely is.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Because people need to make choices and make stands on where they think about things, not just about the world, but also about themselves. How smart do I think I am in relation to everybody else? And with the pandemic, we saw that with People are under a high amount of stress. They feel like they need to make quick, rational decisions based off of the information that they think is relevant. Now, if you're only listening to Rush Limbaugh,
Yeah.
right?
R.I.P.
Right.
His gold microphone.
Rest in penis, Rush Limbaugh.
Or Vicodin.
Or
Wasn't he
Vicodin.
addicted to that or something?
I don't know.
I think
don't
he
know.
was.
But my cognitive bias says probably. But for real, if
Yeah.
you're thinking that and his ilk are going to provide you with relevant, accurate information,
Yeah.
you're going to make your quick decision based off of that information.
Sure.
And thus your conclusions are going to be affected by that
Yeah.
with that bias. Conversely, if the information that you think is relevant is coming from the CDC or from your physician, who's a trusted physician and generally makes rational decisions, and peers in your community who work in healthcare, or virologists, or these other people who other people deem to be experts in their field,
Yeah.
then the relevant info that you're pulling is maybe of a different value.
Yeah.
Then
well,
that-
I mean, that's because the CDC doesn't have a hot ass TikTok account.
No. Or do they? I feel like if they don't, then but they're a government agency in China.
So expanding on that a little bit, is there anything about the Dunning-Kruger effect that talks about or explains the delivery of that information? Because things like niche news organizations have flashier presentations than the CDC might, or fill in the blank on whatever.
Sure.
Where something that might be considered more reliable or more accurate or from experts is a little bit more dry, because they're focused maybe on the content of the message, whereas somebody who has just a quick opinion on something is going to dress it up a little bit.
I mean, you ever heard the term hot take?
Yeah.
A hot take is usually like a from the hip, off the cuff hot take. Here's my opinion. And usually we take it with a like, you're right.
Yeah.
You got that hot take. It's a spicy opinion, but it's probably right.
Oh, okay.
So, how we perceive that information, the source of that information, absolutely affects how accurate we think it is.
Yeah.
If we think that spicy hot take is coming from a place of boldness, they're saying what everybody else is thinking and they're too afraid to say it, but this guy's saying it.
Yeah. Does that make Mount Stupid like way more mountainy?
It's like fucking Everest, you know?
Yeah.
It's a pow. And that's why when you see people like folks that are coming out of a cult-like religious situation, right? Or someone who went down the YouTube rabbit hole and started doing Pizzagate QAnon stuff, why they're so hard to pull off of those ledges, and why it's often very isolating for them coming out of those experiences into maybe a more normative state, because they were up here. They felt real confident about what they had.
Yeah.
Right. And then once they got more knowledge, once they kept learning, whenever they decided to do that, whether it was thrust upon them or they sought it out, and they started internalizing that knowledge, their confidence in what they see as true in the world just, right, that plummets.
Yeah.
And that can cause people to give up, right? And then they either abandon the truth seeking entirely, or they keep going, and then eventually they feel like they can trust themselves in the world again.
Sure. What about the folks that stay up there? What if the folks that stay on Mount Stupid and really just dig in and settle on top of the mountain? What does the Dunning-Kruger effect have to say about those folks? Because it would seem that they are an anomaly, and if this is a thing that is true in the broad sense, then Because I'm asking because it feels like there are more people making camp up there these days than probably in the past. But you tell me
Well, I mean, that's interesting, right? Because like you understand people's own competence to be lower, right? And you feel pretty confident about that.
Am I demonstrating it right now?
Yeah.
Tight.
And then maybe as you learned more about what the average person thinks, you'd be like, oh, I don't know anything about anything. And we've talked about this in the past about how like there are minorities of people, not like brown people, but like the minority of people believe extremely about topics.
Well, I can say that for certain because I am a brown person.
And I feel pretty meh.
I feel extremely about things.
Yeah, you do on occasion.
Those tacos that we had, I felt very passionately about that they might have been the best tacos I've ever eaten.
In your life?
Yeah.
They were pretty fucking bomb. What was that place called again?
I don't even know.
I don't know either. Damn, we ate there twice.
Yeah.
And we walked by it many, many times. We'll throw a sponsorship in there. Like sponsored by. Yeah. And so we experience this all the time in our day-to-day lives, that Dunning-Kruger effect. And we experience it over time as we learn about new things. Here's the thing. That graph that people associate with the Dunning-Kruger effect is not the Dunning-Kruger effect.
What is it?
So
you tricked me.
I know, I did because
part of the
that was it.
Effect?
That was a huge part of it. Yeah.
Wow, I feel duped.
The great irony is people use the phrase Dunning-Kruger effect to describe the phenomenon of what they perceive as stupid people thinking they're smart, and thus they ruin the world.
Okay.
Right?
Tell me more.
So like from a politician that's like, I get it. There's just too many brown people here. We just need to bust them all out and build a wall. Right?
Yeah.
And it's their confidence level in their own competence that is causing all of these problems. And if they just kept going down the mountain, then we could have better solutions to things. Right?
Those are the folks that I was just alluding to earlier.
Right.
The ones making camp up there
that get stuck there. Yeah. So people quote Dunning-Kruger effect when they describe that phenomenon. However, the actual study that they talk about in the Dunning-Kruger effect, I gave you time there to edit that out. The name of the study is Unskilled and Unaware of It, How Difficulties in Recognizing One's Own Incompetence lead to Inflated Self-Assessments.
Okay.
How difficulties in recognizing one's own incompetence lead to inflated self-assessments.
Yeah.
Right? Sounds similar to what we've just been talking about.
Yep.
Here's the difference. So the study itself that they did, they had students at the university where they were doing their experiments.
Which one? Because that matters.
Man. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Except it kind of matters. But anyway.
It does, actually.
It does. Well, it does. And we'll talk about why it does. But here's the study, right? Because it's important to know what the study actually is before we keep quoting it. So the study was, you had all these students, right, in this experiment, and they gave them assessments on humor and grammar and logic and reasoning, like those kinds of tests and assessments. And then after the test, they divided all the students up in order of performance, right? How they actually did.
Okay.
Bottom quartile, middle, upper, top. Like, oh, well, I guess looking at you. Bottom to the top.
I got you.
Right, on the x-axis.
So that was across all of those different areas?
Yeah, average score.
Okay. It wasn't like these people scored
here on this
high
and this.
Funny, and these people scored high and...
Yeah, just like the top performers, bottom performers, split them up that way. So the actual graph, right? These are the performers here. And then on the y-axis, you have their scores, right? So the actual scores, the lowest performers got the lowest scores, right? That makes sense. And the highest performers got the highest scores. Straight line, right?
Yeah.
Up the score.
Yeah, so just like a regular
Meep.
line going
Yeah.
up.
I know there's a term for that. I remember it in algebra. It's the uppy one.
Yeah, I went to art school. I don't know.
I almost got my degree in nonprofit management, and that graph only went that way. And so then this next little graph that it shows on there is their self-assessments, right? You've done reviews before, like professional reviews, where your manager has asked you, well, how do you think you did this year?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Just rate yourself.
Right.
When you do those,
It's a pointless exercise.
I agree. But when you do those, how do you usually rate yourself? What do you usually give yourself?
Oh, well, actually, that's changed.
Tell me more.
I used to try to be what I thought was honest. And you knowing me, and maybe the audience has picked up on this a little bit, I'm sort of self-deprecating. I think little of myself. It's a good Jim Halpert. And so I would maybe score myself a little on the lower end. That is now flipped a little bit to rating myself higher. Not because I don't think I deserve it.
Yeah.
Because I'm just trying to have more confidence.
Oh,
I think.
interesting.
And, yeah. Not unearned confidence.
Yeah.
If
yeah.
that makes sense.
Totally. So when you say you rate it higher, it's not that you rate it higher than you think you deserve. It's you rate it higher than what your initial inclination is to rate yourself.
Yes, and because I'm taking an input from others, because I believe that my opinion about myself can't be trusted.
Fascinating. Okay. I'm sure there's a whole term about that. You should be studied in a lab.
Well, because I mean, like where I work and with you and our friends, there are folks that I'm surrounded by whose opinions I trust. And I think if I'm not listening to them and I'm only listening to myself, and what I'm telling myself is not the thing I'm hearing from them, then that math doesn't math.
So healthy, you guys. Sorry, I can't help it.
So I'm trying to like average the two, I think.
That's really healthy. I will share that when I was at Midland, I had a math teacher, and yep, it was the same one that taught me these graph stuff. So didn't really work, Phil. You failed.
That was his first mistake. He let you call him Phil.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Most of the teachers at Midland let us call them by their first names, except the English teacher, Mr. Cummings, who I think you met at Emma's wedding.
Oh, I don't
Anyway, he was the English teacher. And yeah, he made it very clear from the beginning, day one, we were to call him Mr. Cummings and not Ian. But I know your name was Ian. Everybody knew. All right. But oddly, it did give us a sense of disconnection from him.
Yeah.
In the way that calling someone by their honorific usually does. That sneaky bastard. So Phil would have us give ourselves a self-assessment at the end of the year. Right? Uh-huh. And then what I didn't know, but what I found out after that year of teaching with him or learning with him, and then the second year I was with him again, was that he uses that motherfucking grade as your grade. Yeah, because he was a tricky motherfucker. And I know he still teaches there. So Phil, if you're listening and you still do that, God damn you.
Wait, so you would grade
You would
yourself.
do however you would do during the actual school year. You would perform however you would fucking perform. Not doing any homework, but like doing okay in class, getting like 60s and 70s on quizzes and things. You could have skated by that way.
Right.
And then giving yourself an A on the self-assessment. Well, and then he would give you the A.
Fuck.
Because he's a philosophical, psychological bastard.
Yeah, that's tricky.
Similarly,
It's a dirty trick, Phil.
if you were like my roommate Katie and did all of your assignments, did the extra credit, got like 80s, 90s, etc. on your quizzes and tests, and gave yourself a B- because you're a humble bitch, then he'd give you a B-.
God damn.
Yup.
Oh, man.
So I learned this the first year, and I tried to be a little honest. I went honest plus, so I give myself a C+. But then looking at the actual averages and stuff, I was like, I should have gotten a D- this year. But instead, I got a C+. And he revealed to us that is what he ended up doing. We were like,
Whoa.
What? So the next year, I gave myself an A-. And he came to me and went, Alexis. And okay, so here's what the actual study shows, right? When these students gave themselves or did the self-assessments and were asked to rate how they thought they did, the bottom performers almost unilaterally rated themselves higher than their actual performance by a significant enough like a statistically significant margin.
Okay.
Like from a 30 to a 60 type vibe. As you go up in performer level, it kind of stays there where the performers still rate themselves like kind of lower than what they actually, or higher than what they actually performed.
Yeah.
Up until you reach the upper level performers, at which point it dips down a little bit and they rate themselves lower than what they actually performed.
Interesting.
Yes. Which is a totally different kind of fucking graph.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Way different.
So people think of this one, which is still an important thing to be thinking about. The
Mount Stupid
unskilled, the Mount Stupid, the unskilled overconfidence.
Yeah.
Leading to the drop as knowledge increases and then the increase. This is a totally different effect.
Yeah.
Right? But people think of this one. And because everybody thinks of this one, we all think it's this one. And that means we're right there.
We're playing ourselves.
Now, what's fun about this is you could ask someone like me, that's I asked myself at the beginning, whenever I do these episodes, before I start studying for them, I go, I think I know a fair amount about this. And I'll be like, I think I know like a solid B average on this topic. And then I'll learn about it and I'll be like, oh, there's so much to learn. I actually don't know anything. This is hard. Maybe we should just do the episode next week. And I'm like, okay, it's fine. We'll get through it. It'll be good. And then I feel like, okay, I could explain this to Ryan. But actually, this is what the actual effect is. It's that low performers will rate themselves higher than they actually performed when they have to self-assess. High performers will tend to rate themselves a little bit lower.
Just a touch lower. It's not proportionate.
No, it's not like it doesn't make an X.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry. Where it's like, meh.
Yeah.
It's more of that. It's more of that like
right.
kind
and
of.
So for listeners, we'll put the
Yes.
graph up in the link.
The
in
two
show
graphs.
notes, so that you can see this, or you can probably just Google it, but we'll put it up there anyway.
When you Google it, listener, I want you to look and see which of these two graphs pops up when you type in Dunning-Kruger Effect.
Yeah. Okay. Here's a plan. We're gonna post these graphs.
Yeah.
On Instagram.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
Google it as well and comment what you find.
Yeah.
That'll be a cool way to like get a little real-time poll going. That'd be fun.
It would be super fun. And there is a way on Instagram to do a poll
Yeah.
and to ask people, do you think you know what the Dunning-Kruger effect is? And they'd be like, yeah. And we'd be like, no. And then after they listen to the episode, they rate themselves again. And they're
Cool.
like, actually, I know nothing about this.
So we'll do that. That way you can tie in the visual part of this. So where did that roller coastery one, where did the Mount Stupid one come from if the real one is actually more sort of leveled out?
From my understanding, the Mount Stupid one is sort of like just a product of understanding things about cognitive bias and understanding things about the way that we learn. And it's kind of just a product of pop science. You know?
I like that term. Is that a real one?
It is a real one.
That's good.
Do you know who Jonah Lehrer is? Have you heard of Jonah Lehrer?
Yeah.
He's,
I don't know who that is, but I've heard that name from somewhere.
He's a pop neurologist kind of science guy. And he did like TED Talks that people found really compelling. He wrote some books that people found really compelling. And he was doing tours and stuff. And then he got called out for plagiarizing things.
Oh.
And then plagiarizing his own things and just saying things that were inaccurate and untrue. But people were like, you're smart, you're compelling.
How do you plagiarize yourself?
By like reusing parts of your own published work in new original pieces of published work. Like, for example, he would write a book on something and then he would be contracted to write something for the Washington Post. And he would just copy paste parts of his own book and then put it in his fresh article that he was getting paid for the Washington Post.
Was he thinking like, well, I wrote it, so
it's
what's
fine.
the big deal?
Yeah. And then in the process of doing that, he'd like fudge some numbers and like make up quotes that people didn't actually say, but they're dead, so they can't.
Yeah.
Like he made up this story about Bob Dylan. It's talking about how he didn't like to be asked what the meanings of his songs were because it didn't mean anything anyway. And like Bob Dylan never said that. But everyone was just like, yeah, Jonah, that's awesome. Like, yeah, you probably know what that whole shindig is with Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
And it just took one like plucky little reporter to call him out on it. And then now he can't get a job doing anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Because he's a damn dirty liar.
Because he's a goddamn dirty liar, Jonah Lehrer. Goddamn dirty liar. Yeah, so it's kind of like a pop science thing at this point. So it's really important, folks, that, and I use this at work all the time, never attribute to malice what can properly be attributed to incompetence.
I love that quote.
I do too.
You've said it to me before. Where does it come from again?
I don't remember. Yeah. I don't remember.
Good though.
It's so good. And it gets me through the day. It really does.
Because I think I had like some snappy little quip about it too.
And I'm probably like misquoting it, but the way I always remember it is never attribute to malice what can properly be attributed to incompetence.
Oh, and then I said something like sometimes incompetence can be
malicious. Yeah, that's right. Which is also a tasty treat. And that's what weaponized incompetence is, guys. And that's going to be another episode. So just stay tuned for that.
Down the road. Further
down the road. It won't be the one right after this. Yeah. And I like it a lot because it's really easy for people to assume that incompetent people are the way that they are or believe the things that they do because they're assholes.
Yeah.
Right? It's really easy for us to think that. Like, God damn, these people don't know what they're talking about. And here they are going, I have this opinion and I have this stance on this. And they don't know.
Yeah.
They're not experts. They're not there. They're not on the ground. They don't know what's going on. They haven't done the research.
Yeah.
They don't have doctorates, you know?
Well, maybe it's a stretch to tie these two things together. But we had this conversation about my friends. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of friends who ideologically are very different from me, and I like being their friend because I get to hear their different perspective. And I don't want this to come across as me being high and mighty and all welcoming
and like you don't see race,
all that stuff. Right? Yeah. But I think and I explained to you like the value that they give to me as friends. Part of it is that they have a different perspective, that I don't think that they're stupid, or I don't think that they're
malicious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just different. Mm-hmm. And that helps me in my develop I guess maybe a more well-rounded approach to different things. Is that kind of
there's
the
probably
antidote for some of the
Well, I mean, it depends on your desired outcome, I think, right? Because if your desired outcome is like the most understanding of human psychology and why people are the way that they are and being more accepting and more tolerant, then that probably is a good route to get there. Where we often differ is I get stuck on those folks and perceiving them as being at the peak amount stupid. And if they would just bother to learn a little bit more, then it would humble them down. And then if they just stuck it out, then they would actually learn something. And their confidence would be well-founded instead of misfounded.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even necessarily mean that their opinion, whatever it was, or their stance was wrong. It just means if they just took the time to learn more, to perceive more, to be open to learning more. But I perceive them as being stuck where they are and pleased as shit about it. Pleased as punch.
Yeah.
Minding their own biscuits.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and just to kind of tie up the last thing that I said, I don't want to come across as somebody who knows how to get around all that, because I do plenty of that myself too. I guess what is, according to the research and the studies that they've done, what is it the only way out of it to keep learning, to keep listening to people, and it's really that simple?
Yeah, I would say that's true for both of those graphs. Right?
Yeah.
Because ultimately only one of them is actually relating to the Dunning-Kruger effect. But in both of those graphs, we see that the more skilled, the more knowledge you are, the more knowledge, the higher performer that you are, the more your actual knowledge is, right? So the more that you learn, the more you actually know. Regardless of where you see yourself.
Yeah.
Regardless of where you see yourself, the more you actually know. And typically and what's cool about this is usually in the Dunning-Kruger effect, the actual graph, the high performers, even though they tend to rate themselves a little bit lower, they're still pretty accurate. Like we're talking, again, in a smaller deviation than the low performers thinking of themselves as doing really well.
Yeah.
So the higher performers, their deviation to their actual score is relatively small, which means they're thinking, maybe I didn't do as great as I actually did, but they're still close. So we're talking like maybe rating themselves a 90 versus a 95, right? And what's cool about that is even though their biases are still affecting them, the more knowledge that they have, the more accurate they'll still be.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And that's the goal. I think the goal is always learning. The goal is curiosity. The goal is overcoming and being aware of our biases and not rejecting them, but just being mindful of them so that when we make our decisions, when we say the shit that's in our brains, that we're just putting a little bit of flavor on it of humility and curiosity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Now you know.
Is there any place that people can go to read more about this?
Wikipedia.
Yeah?
Honestly, I love me some Wikipedia. I know she's not perfect, but it's a really great way to find like that flow chart of information.
Yeah.
It is my
resources
favorite.
section too is money.
It's such money. It's such money. And I strongly recommend, especially on topics that are always changing, like things in psychology, that you check those resources for when they were made. So like when the study happened.
Yeah, that's a good tip.
Yeah, because if it happened in the 1960s or if it happened in 2008, when it comes to population studies, things like that, like shit has changed over time. And we want to make sure the information that we're getting, even you can take in a lot of information, but if the information is shit, that ultimately won't make you more knowledgeable, right? So stay curious, but stay vigilant, right? Trust but verify.
Right.
And I like Wikipedia because it keeps you on an adventure of learning. Like I looked up the Dunning-Kruger effect, and then cognitive biases, and then heuristics, and then from heuristics to the ancient Greek, and then where does that sounds like eureka. Is that where eureka comes from? Yes, it is. Eureka!
Yeah.
And how cool is that like we can get there, and we live in such an amazing time that we have access to things like that.
Yeah.
Whereas in the past we had to have a big old Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yep. Well, that's kind of how the show came about.
Yeah.
It's from that deep dive that you did.
Yeah. Never stop learning.
Cool. Well, thanks, kid. That was really good.
My pleasure. I have to ask you,
Yeah.
how do you feel about this episode?
Pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'm a regular old Donald Duck. Just walking around with my little shirt and no pants.
No pants. What's with that, by the way?
That's your third Donald, by the way. It's a little layup for you.
It's a stretch, but it's a good one. Because you aren't wearing pants.
Not when we do this. Never
No.
wear pants.
Gotta have the airflow.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else?
That's it.
Great. Thanks, kid.
Bye.
Bye.